Well, it started because you said something when we were talking about things that energize or things that deplete us. And you were talking about how important it is to think about giving people grace and empathy.
Yeah.
We both believe that and agree with that. And I think we have gone all in on making sure that we're doing that with each other. And I think that's really important and probably why we show up the way we do, then why people notice that. What we have is really special. And I think it's because we're constantly trying to extend grace to each other when we can and have empathy for each other, even though we don't always get it right.
Yeah. And when we don't get it right, there is an accountability factor that we expect from each other and ourselves.
Right.
Welcome back to In Residence. I'm Keith.
And I'm Laura.
Hey, Laura.
Hey, Keith.
How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm okay as well. I think we're both have a little battle damage.
Is that what we call it?
Was it like my lower back is sore, but I know it's because of my hips, and then my knee is kind of sore. Your knee is even sorer.
Yeah, it's no joke. I will say.
You ordered crutches.
I did. I ordered crutches. So on Friday, I was having a really hard time even getting around the runner's knee or a torn meniscus.
Yeah.
I think that's so I have a ticket to participate in physical therapy, which I think will be good, but not on the plan.
Wasn't part of the plan, but it's
not part of the plan.
It's part of the reality, right?
Yep.
Oh, but yeah, we'll get through it. My back's doing better. My default when it hurts is to stop and seize up. And I know, and I've learned now that that's not the best thing for me. But that doesn't make it easier.
Right.
Like wanting to move through the pain, right? Like, I don't even know if that's what we're talking about today, but that's just what's up with us, right? It's like, oh my gosh, like we're middle-aged millennials and like zennial or whatever. And it's like, my back hurts and my knees hurt. It's just like, oh no. But we're working through it. Like your knee's a little better, right?
It's a little better today.
Taking it easy,
but taking it very easy. Yeah. So it'll be interesting once I kind of get back to work, how that's going to go. It's been nice to have 2 days to keep my foot pretty much up, iced, elevated.
Yeah. Well, because you were gone when it started hurting, right? You were on a work trip.
Well, it started hurting before I went on the work trip, and then it felt pretty good. There's little bouts where it started hurting, and then Friday, it was like the hurt of no return. Yeah.
Do you do the thing like I do where I'm like, well, it's raining, so my knee is sore, like my knee and my ankle get sore when it's raining?
Oh, no. I mean,
I was hoping that was the same with my back, but I'm like, I know it's not.
No, I know it followed a long training run. And so like, I was pretty sure that was most likely the cause of it, but I thought I had iced it enough before it reemerging, shall we say. But yeah, it's pretty achy.
You were gone again on a work trip.
I went to a conference.
It's always a little like, there she goes. It'll be okay. I'll have some me time. But then like 16 hours in, I'm like, I wish I was there. I wish she wasn't gone, So I get that. But you were telling me a lot of what you were noticing while you're on your trip, and that you've been thinking of that practice of paying attention to the world around you and looking for what's actually going on and what you think of that, right? Like the awareness. And it was really interesting. You listed off some things, and I think we're going to get to them. But what came up in my head with that, and I thought maybe it would be an interesting way to maybe guide us through that, is over your travel, what did you notice that was energizing you? And what did you notice that was maybe depleting you? We can tweak that, because that's something I ask myself either daily, if not weekly, especially when I'm like having a hard time thinking of something to write about, like in my journal. I'm just like, well, what was good about yesterday? And like, and trying to do that value judgment, but more of like, what what energized me and what depleted me. So, that's just something that's been in my mind for several months. And as you were talking about like your experiences, I was like, oh, I want to ask Laura, like, maybe that's a good way to get you talking about kind of your work adventure trip.
Yeah.
Because you were talking about your experience at the airport, your experience checking in to the hotel when you got there, going out to dinners, things like that.
Right.
When I think of the airport, that depletes me. You were noticing some things while you were there. And then when you got to the hotel, some other thing happened. A couple of things happened. And I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. Right. So that's kind of what got me thinking of what energizes me and what depletes me. And I'm like, oh, I wonder how that felt for Laura.
That's interesting. I was thinking the first example just around the airport.
Mm-hmm.
So I flew Southwest, and I think
Not sponsored.
No, but I think it's important. Southwest doesn't give you assignments for your seats. They have you board the plane by a position number. Whenever you check in is when your position number is, then they board in that way.
So if you check in late, you're last to get on the plane.
Yeah. And you're almost guaranteed a middle seat. Two things that I was noticing is that although we knew that we were going to board in that way, when they started talking about pre-boarding, everyone stood up and just kind of hovered around the gate, even though we all knew the process.
Oh, so like that kind of that surge forward, right? Everyone takes like 3 steps closer. It reminds me like at a concert when like the lights go down and everyone just kind of, we were all standing there waiting for the band to come on. But as soon as like there's a cue, we all want to be a little bit closer.
Yep.
We think that's going to do something for us. Because then you said you're all going to arrive at the same time.
Exactly.
Why do I need to be in front of you?
I mean, there was this, I think part of, for me, they load A 1 through 6C, B 1 through 6C, and then the C's. I was like C15. So I was sitting there going, oh, I am most definitely going to get a middle seat, but I wanted to know which one I was going to be in. I don't even know why.
So were you with all the other people when they said we're going to start pre-boarding? Did you get up and move closer?
I didn't move closer. I did get up though.
Okay.
And I stood because I wanted to know, I kind of wanted to know what was going on. It's silly.
Well, that's a human thing, right?
It's a human thing. But I do remember there was something energizing, like, okay, we're going to get to our destination. But then also there was something depleting of really not working myself up, but kind of that angsty feeling of where am I going to sit? Am I going to be comfortable? I like to put my AirPods in and listen to a podcast that I've downloaded or a CD and then read.
CD.
What? Oh, sorry.
You said CD.
Music. But something I've downloaded. I like to listen to something and read. Depending on who you're sitting by on a plane, that may or may not be their journey, right? or intent. And so my people pleasing sometimes comes into play where I might not get to sit there with my AirPods in and just listen to what I want to listen to and zone out. I actually picked my seat based on that. There's 2 people that already had their AirPods in. I'm like, cool, that's my spot.
You didn't tell me that yet.
No, I didn't.
Hilarious.
I think just not knowing about where I was going to sit, even though I knew logically we were all going to be on this plane and arrive in Chicago at the same time. There's something depleting about that. I think I slept on the plane.
Oh, wow.
65-minute flight up and down.
Yeah.
I think I slept.
Because you were worn out from like the worry?
No, I mean that. And
that's what it sounds like.
Well, partially that, but then I think we were also up late because I was trying to pack and our dryer had puttered out.
I forgot.
And so you had to get a new dryer.
I spent like a day and a half sourcing whether or not I needed to replace a part or replace the dryer.
Right.
It ended up being worth it to get a new one.
Yeah.
And so then I was on a mission to get your laundry done.
Right. Yeah. And so I think we were up late because we were trying to get the laundry done so I could pack the things I needed. And so I slept. And so that was depleting. I actually, when I got to my hotel, it was probably around 11 or noon. And I just hung out and I took a nap. I ordered some DoorDash.
A lot of naps for you in a day.
I know. I was just tired. something that maybe energized me at the same time. And I was kind of excited when I told you this.
Mm-hmm.
I got to my hotel and I was staying at a hotel where I know the rooms are very reasonable, but are also a little on the small side, which isn't that big of a deal. All I need to do is sleep in it. You weren't with, the kids weren't with.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need that much. But the person that checked me in, he kept calling me my lady. He's like, my lady, let me see what we got. It was very, very nice and just made me feel special. And he said, you know what? I'm going to find a room for you that is facing the river with a king size bed in it. So you can kind of spread out a little more. And it was just really, really nice. A really nice touch that I had been there early. He was going to help me check in and really help me have a nice space to really be my home base for the next couple days. So that really energized me too, to have a nice
interaction.
Yeah,
it's personable.
Yeah.
Made you feel special.
Really kind person.
Yeah.
And so that was good.
Okay, so that definitely energizes you.
And I think when I was talking to you a little bit, I said, you know, that idea of how do you add a little sparkle to someone's day?
Yeah.
That's what I felt that person did for me. They added a little sparkle to my day. I think that's important, right? To figure out how can you do that? Because that can either not just create energy for somebody else or energize someone, but yourself too. Because I feel that. I don't know if you do, when you do something kind of above and beyond to make someone feel special, even just knowing that you add a little sparkle to someone's day also makes you have a little bit of sparkle by association. I don't know.
Like, I do the nice thing. I do the thing because I want to make somebody feel sparkly, let's say.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I recognize it as something extra or something, or for me, you know. I'm not trying to, again, when I say stuff like that, I feel like I'm being all like holier than thou. But what I really mean is like, oh, I should maybe pay attention to that, because maybe that's something for me to take note of. How did that feel?
Well, I'm curious, when you do something for someone else like that, whether it's good customer service or just being kind and trying to make someone's day or just improve it a little bit, does that deplete you or does that energize you?
Oh, it totally energizes me. I've realized, because I've been doing that work of, well, what energizes me? It's like, oh, I connected with a friend. But what I'm noticing is a really good way for me to prompt myself to connect with somebody is like practicing gratitude. Because it's like 90% of the time, when you don't text somebody or reach out to them, it's like, well, I don't know what to talk to them about, or they're probably busy, right? You could get in that mindset. The shortcut to get around that block is, who doesn't like to hear I love you, or was thinking about you, hope you're having a great day. Just saying like, hey, I was just thinking about you, I want to say hi. It's a way for me to execute a practice that is good for everybody, because it energizes me to connect. And what's a way for me to get into that state faster is, hey, how are you doing? Was just thinking about you. And then it turns into more of a connection of, this is what I'm up to after you told me what you were doing, or this or that, you know? So I'm rambling. Connecting with the right people really makes me feel better.
Yeah, I get that. What? You're thinking of something. I see it.
Well, so you had a great experience checking in.
Yeah.
But then you also had a different experience in the actual room. So I thought that was almost comical. And it actually made my brain think, oh, did they know?
Oh, you went there.
Yeah. And I doubt it. But so tell us what happened.
Doubt it.
Your experience once you're actually in the nice view room.
Yeah. Well, the room, so as I mentioned, the room overlooked the Chicago River, and it was in an older building, but really beautiful. I thought, this is amazing. And I was there from Saturday through Tuesday. Saturday night comes, I get to bed, and between maybe like midnight to 2:30 in the morning, it was loud. I mean, everyone was out there having a great time. either on rooftop bars or just wandering around the river walk. They were driving cars up and down with music blasting, showing off their cool rides. And what?
They're cool rides. You're so funny.
I don't know, like they're cool cars or they're cool, you know what I mean?
Yep.
They're vehicles and lots of sirens and things like that, which is to be expected. And I am in the weekend in Chicago, right downtown. Makes sense. I'm like, this is just what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Then it started to quiet down, probably around 2:30 in the morning or close to 3, probably 2:30. All of a sudden I wake up and I hear kind of a loudspeaker coming, and I'm assuming it's from the police or somebody, but coming down and saying, "Move your cars or they will be towed. There is no parking on the street." And I heard this probably for a good 10 minutes, and it kept getting louder and louder, and then it got quieter and quieter. So they were just going right down the street that I was on, basically telling everyone to move their cars. Again, absolutely makes sense, but I experienced that 2 of the 3 nights I was there.
Oof.
I might have slept through the 3rd night. I honestly don't know, but it was something that was unanticipated, but it left me a little sleepy the next day because I think I woke up, a good 2-3 times each night just because of that.
So does that negate the experience of how it felt to the check-in and then that experience? I don't know if my brain goes to the negative and focuses on that or holds on to, well, that was a really great experience. That person made me feel special while they were talking to me and checking me in. I don't know which one I would focus on. Like, I would hope I would focus on the positive, right?
Yeah, I think I focus on the positive.
You haven't been complaining about it left and right. It's just, it was an interesting thing, that juxtaposition of a positive and a negative in the same experience,
right?
The same location.
I don't think that outweighs the good or how special I felt getting checked in. But I will say it made for a couple tired mornings.
Would you stay in that room again?
Oh, gosh. I don't know if I would.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if I would.
That's the only answer I wanted. That's what I figured. Because I don't ever remember being down there and having an experience like that.
Right.
I usually even bring earplugs with me.
Yeah. I stayed at the same place last year didn't remember that.
I'm guessing it was just like where you were facing.
Possibly. Probably. So the one thing that's coming up for me, and I do like the idea and the framing of energy and depleted, because I think we all feel that in different ways. Being at a conference often, and I think I posted about this in Purple Space, but I was energized and exhausted at the same time from the conference. I think the one thing that energizes me is being around people, connecting with people, sharing ideas, having good conversations, learning, all of those things. Being around people and interacting with them really does bring me energy. And I know you and I experienced that a little differently. We were actually just talking about that yesterday.
Yeah, with our friend Laura.
Yeah.
That was so funny. I think she and I are a little more similar, where I can turn it on for people, and I enjoy connecting with people, even if they're relative strangers, and socializing, but it drains me. That's when I'll need a nap. Like, I don't nap often, but when it's a lot of interactions and socializing, I think in particular, people I'm not super familiar with, it kind of depletes me. And not in a negative way, but I can tell I definitely need to find a way to restore my energy levels. Whereas obviously talking with you or other close friends, that doesn't deplete me. That's usually a source of energy. And so, yeah, we're different. But yeah, so you were doing lots of socializing.
I was, and that was bringing me energy. And I don't know if you're okay if I talk about this, but sometimes when we host things at our house, is it okay if I talk about this?
I shouldn't say okay when I don't know what you're going to talk about first.
There you go.
Is it okay if you talk about it? Yeah, go ahead. Be gentle.
Okay. Well, no, I don't think it's harsh.
No.
When we were first hosting things at our house, I think in particular, I noticed it more where we would get our house clean. We would be waiting for family or friends to come over to celebrate a birthday, a holiday, or just because we wanted to have a get together. And about 2/3 of the way through people being there, you just kind of disappeared from my vision line, right? Like the dishes had to be done, or we had to get people to get the cake, or like, where is Keith?
Yeah.
And I would just look over in the living room and you'd be passed out just sleeping.
I'd be slumped over,
just sleeping on the couch.
Yeah. And I don't nap very often.
You don't. So you like powered down.
I was overloaded, right? Like, I don't know how else to say. Overwhelmed, I don't know. But it was interesting to wake up to that and everyone being like, what the heck? Guess I just needed a reboot. I don't know. It's been a while, but like that's a physical reaction to stimulus, right?
Right. And I don't think either one of us fully understood that.
No.
Because I don't think I had as much grace with you.
No, because that's not your experience, right?
Right.
We react completely different to those forces. Like, you're energized by socializing, and I'm on the other side of that spectrum where, like, I don't want to sound like a curmudgeon, but I definitely need to recharge after like entertaining.
Yes.
You didn't get it, right?
I definitely did not understand.
Right? I didn't really either. I was just like, I had no control over it. Like, it just power down, reboot the hard drive to see if it'll run better after a reset, kind of thing. Yeah. It was new to me too.
Yeah.
But that's something that, like, we've had experiences like that. And like we talked about when we traveled together the first time internationally, right?
Right.
Those learnings of how we are and how the person we're with, how they react, that can be really tricky if we're only thinking of how we think of it or our perspective.
Yeah.
And I guess that's empathy, right? Is like when you put yourself in somebody else's shoes. It's hard to do without practice.
Right.
So that, I don't know why that just came out, but it's something we've gotten better and better at, I think, as a couple.
Yeah, I think so.
Giving each other grace and the benefit of the doubt. I didn't think I was going to start rambling about that, but I think it's a good point to make, actually.
I agree with you, because I think sometimes it seems like everything is rainbows and unicorns with us.
We've gotten feedback like that, right?
Yeah.
Let's go here, right?
Yeah, why not?
I love the feedback because it's completely affirming and it's positive, right? That we have such a great relationship, right?
Yeah.
And
I think we have a lovely relationship.
Yeah. But everyone mostly hears what we want them to hear. Sometimes we let a few things like behind the curtain show, right? Like there's one episode where I sound depressed and like, oh, the podcast, this is probably the last episode because Keith is not in a good space, right? I'm like,
you were feeling hard.
Nothing we're saying is good. This is dumb, blah, blah, blah. Like, I didn't say that exactly, but but that was probably what everyone heard. My point is like, we're in a relationship and it's not always, like you said, rainbows and unicorns. So, but it's a lot more of that than when we were in our 20s and 30s.
Yes.
Right. We've at a certain point, is it fair to say, like, we realized like, oh, this takes more than a commitment to be in a partnership. It actually takes work and real commitment.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but you got to want it.
Well, and some of it showing up when you don't want to, or you're frustrated.
Or being able to say like, I better not show up right now because I'm really frustrated.
Like, I need to take a step.
Go for a walk or something. Yeah. Like, so anyway.
I feel like where we've talked into is more just about the frustration parts. Do you know what I mean? But I feel like there's fewer of those the longer we've been partners.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't want to focus on spats or times where we've had disagreements.
Spats.
Isn't that a word?
It is a word.
The whole thing where, like, when I was talking about like having grace and empathy and stuff, I think that's the bigger thing to focus on is, I don't remember exactly when, but when it clicked that, oh, I think the way I think and Laura thinks the way she thinks. And we can both talk about that and listen to each other. And there was one time when I had a really hard time understanding what you were trying to tell me. And you were like almost beyond frustrated.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh.
And I wasn't doing anything to help it, but it's because I didn't know. I don't even remember what it was.
I don't either.
The point isn't what it was about, but it finally clicked. There was like an aha moment where I'm like, oh, my perception and my reality is not yours. And I need to be aware of that. And I need to be open to you telling me that information and finding a way to hold it and acknowledge it. It was something like that. And I was probably like, oh, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I didn't see you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
For whatever it was. What has it been? 17 years of marriage?
Coming up. Right?
Yeah. But like we've been together for
a
couple decades.
Yeah, a couple decades.
Yeah. What energizes me, like to kind of bring that in, when we're talking about like us, is our willingness to understand each other, to want the clarity and the understanding of where the other person's coming from. It's not always easy because we're in our own heads, we're busy. And so, I mean, that's, I think, half of the reason that these conversations are important to us. And sometimes when I get that real hard, heavy feeling of like, I don't know if any of this is worth it, it's because it's so important to me. Because believe it or not, we don't talk all that much because you're busy.
Passing in the night.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
And so like, you don't notice it until you notice it. And it's like, oh, we need to make time for each other and ourselves. Like, you and I are different than us, but we need to serve all three of those things.
Right.
And so it's complex and complicated. At the same time, it can be simple. And that's one of my favorite things is like, it's simple, but maybe not easy. And then the grace and the compassion comes up. I feel like I'm rambling a bunch, so I'm going to be quiet for a little bit.
No, you said a lot there.
No. I don't socialize as much, so it just gets all bottled up. And then when I having intimate conversations with people that I feel connected to, it all comes spilling out, right? And then I'm a lot.
You're not a lot. One thing that you touched on that I think is important for us, I know we've talked a lot about the podcast, right? And like, how much is this us trying to add value to the world? Because we want to do that, but how it's also just as important for us to be on this journey and have this project together to create something and spend time with one another and have good and deep conversations with one another. That's really important to us. I'm not necessarily seeking to have thousands and millions of listens and downloads. For me, it's enough that I get to spend this time with you and have a good conversation. We both love ideas. We both love learning. I always think that's some of the best parts of my week is either recording the podcast or having coffee and sitting on the couch and having conversations, going to supper with you when we get a chance to go out for a meal. That's always been one of my favorite things to do with you because we get to talk kind of as a couple and not be as distracted.
Distracted by what?
So distracted might be too heavy of a term, but I think you were touching on it, that conversations with you are different when we add more people to the mix, even when we have the whole family, right? Child 1 and child 2 with.
The dynamics change, right?
Dynamics different, but it's good. That's good too.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something that I think is really important to just prioritize and make time for the two of us.
Oh, absolutely.
To have that, to have a date night. I think it was a couple weeks ago, I really wanted to go and have project time at a winery or at just somewhere to kind of just to go and talk and be
in a different space, right?
In a different space. Because it just
shake it up a little.
Yeah. And when I'm home, I mean, this sounds silly, but this might resonate with folks and maybe with you. But when I'm at home, I'm always thinking about what things are on my list to do. Like, oh, it's recycling tomorrow. We have to make sure to get the boxes all broken down and in the bin so we aren't behind.
Actually?
It is actually. Yeah, it is.
I thought that this morning too.
Yeah.
It's on my radar.
Or, oh, I need to organize and clean up my office, or I should clean my side of the bathroom counter. You know, it's kind of like I have this ticking list of to-dos that cloud my ability to feel fully present with you. And I like to be fully present with you.
Yeah, I feel like we've talked about this before where that's a really interesting technique that I've never thought of, which is part of the reason why you like to travel is because then you literally have a physical limitation to what you can be responsible for or asked to do.
Yeah.
It's like, I think it was like, nope, I can't respond to your email right now because I'm in another state. Or, I don't.
On a plane.
Yeah. So I remember now that is something for me to be cognizant of. It's just that idea of you need to date your partner, even if you've been together for a while.
Yeah.
You've heard of that,
I've
right?
heard that. I think it's important.
Yeah. And make time. And that's like this recording having to go out is like a way of doing that. Of we have to get together and talk because we decided that we're going to show up every week with a new episode. So that's a little bit of a mechanism that makes us make time.
Right.
And it's really important. We're on the same page. You said just a little bit ago, like we're not necessarily doing this to get a lot of listeners or follows, right?
Right.
And at the same time, we know enough to realize that if we want something to grow, you kind of need to grow your audience. But I like the idea of if you don't focus on that, you'll probably get there faster. More people will like what we're doing if we're not focused on capturing their attention, right? It's more of we're here to show up and share our experiences, and it's just going to maybe take a little more time to find it. Or it's okay that it's not going to be for everybody. Because not everybody has a relationship like ours, or maybe wants a relationship that we're seeking to find and have and cultivate. I'm not going to change the way our dynamic works to get more listens.
Yeah.
I'm going to change our dynamic because it's what it's going to work better for us, right?
Exactly.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, I'm thinking about the idea of energize and deplete, like in depletion. And maybe I'm opening up a can of worms, so we don't want to go to. Thinking about our partnership, what things deplete you and what things energize you?
Oh boy.
Or is there like one or two things of depletion and one or two things of energize?
Well,
or is that not a fair
No. Let's
like framing to go with?
Well, let's just see what comes up for me. So the first thing that comes to my mind, it's come up a few times and you actually brought it up, and we'll maybe dive into another episode, an episode with a little more emphasis on this, like love language, right?
Yeah.
We have different love languages.
Yes.
And the biggest thing, for instance, is the way I grew up was to not be an inconvenience. And so I don't tend to ask for things because I'll get it myself. Whereas you'll ask me to get you a glass of water and I'll be like, I like early on, like this would happen. And I'd get cranky, right? Like, I'm like, well, and because I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that your thing was acts of service and that you like being taken care of or being considered, right?
Yeah.
Where my whole thing was like, don't bother anybody. Do it yourself. And so it doesn't deplete me because I'm aware of it now. And I love making sure you feel taken care of or that you're considered, because I know that's something that speaks to you. But that's just like kind of what comes up off the top of my head. Different things do it for us, you know, and sometimes I forget. So I'll think of some more. What do you got? I feel like you have something since you brought it up.
No, I will say that is something that from a energized standpoint, that makes me feel really special. Even like yesterday, I was going to take a bath and you went and got me a glass of wine and my book to read. Mm-hmm. So sweet.
Yeah. Well, you asked for the book.
I did.
And the wine, I'm like, she's going to like.
I also have a bum knee, so I feel like I have to explain that a little.
But I'm like,
asking for help.
Yeah. No. My point was like, you didn't ask for wine, I don't think. But so my point was to be like, Keith's a great guy. No, it was like, of course, like get the book. And I'm like, who doesn't have the imagery of, I'm going to be in a bath, I'm going to read a book, and I'm sipping on a glass of wine, you know, or whatever your favorite beverage is, right? It doesn't have to be alcohol. But like, doesn't that just sound like a treat? Like, it sounds amazing. Like,
yeah.
So.
So one thing I have about depleting or something that it depletes me, and it might be similar for you, but I'll let you kind of speak to it if it does or doesn't resonate. Mm-hmm. When we're trying to communicate and it seems like we're disagreeing, but really we're agreeing, but we're just not communicating in a way that we're seeing each other as agreeing. Mm. So sometimes that can be really depleting for me if I'm like, I think we have the same viewpoint, but we're still talking kind of in a circle around the same thing because we're just using slightly different words. Mm. But neither one of us quite feels like the other one fully understands the other. That's depleting because I'm like, we're so close.
Right. And I think I understand. We both love to be understood and to be heard.
Yes.
Right? There was another thing.
And who doesn't? Right?
Right.
A lot of people.
Well, but we're both aware of it now. That's what I mean. That's the key.
So helpful.
I'm cranky because I don't feel heard. Being able to recognize that is different than wanting to be heard. Recognizing that you want to be heard, right, that's a big deal for me. Once I finally realized, like, oh, I don't feel like anybody's understanding me. I don't feel like anyone's listening to me. That feels bad. Like, I don't like that feeling. That's depleting. But I didn't used to know what that, I felt that way, but I didn't know it was because that was why.
Right.
And so that's a big thing, is being able to name the thing. And then, because then you can communicate it.
Well, and I know we often will say, okay, so I'm going to try and say it just a little differently. Well, right.
Or I'll say I'm like, no, you're just repeating yourself. I literally don't understand what you're saying. Don't say the same words. Right. Because I'll be like frustrated because it's not frustration at you. It comes out like that. Right.
Right.
And then I have to say, like, I sound elevated, but it's because I feel like I'm not good enough to understand. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's one thing that can get or feel really depleting if we're just
circle talking
because we are on the same page, but we're just not.
Yeah.
Because at the end, more often than not, I will say we get to a place where we're like, okay, so I think we are on the same page. It's just, it took us a while to get to understanding where each other's coming from.
Well, and maybe part of that is I like specific language, right? I like
words.
Yeah. Well, and when I help you edit, I'll wordsmith things. I will go for hours working on a sentence because it's too close to a different sentence or combining these, right? Like, where you have no time for that.
No, I just want it to be done. Green check mark.
Yeah. that can turn into like having a conversation or us talking around something. I need to be mindful. It's mostly because I want to have the understanding of what you're saying, and a word might have a different meaning to me than to you, but we can get there faster without getting on each other's nerves, maybe, for lack of a better saying.
And you're a great editor. So it's really, or not even editor, but
well, how about we say it this way?
Content partner.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, because it's more like I edit for clarity.
Yeah.
Or what are you actually trying to say, right?
Yeah.
And so if I get into edit mode when we're trying to have a conversation, or like when we're trying to record a podcast, right? That's depleting.
That depletes me.
Yeah. And
you get the look from this side of the mic.
Yeah. Yeah. Writing and editing are not the same thing. And it usually goes better for both when you're not trying to do them at the same time. I expand that to being creative is not the same as editing what you're being creative about. And so I try to not slip into editor mode while we're talking, but it slips in, because that's how we spend a lot of our collaborations in the past, where you write something, I come in and help edit.
Yep.
Or, well, this isn't quite clear, right? Or what are you actually trying to say here, right?
Yep.
But if I start doing that like right now, it's so stifling, because you're in.
I like to be a free spirit, Keith.
But you're in the act of creating right now, right?
I am.
So I don't come and do that while you're typing usually, right?
Exactly.
You have already written the 15 pages that need to be 4, and I'm like, whoa, girl, like, how can you write so much?
You never say I have an issue with the amount of content.
I know.
Distilling it down.
Yep. So we're a good pair with that.
We are.
Okay, where did that start?
So we were talking just a little bit about being understood, being seen. Do you have another depleting one, or what are things that energize you?
I think the hard part is that maybe I talk about this a lot, and maybe it's not the right thing. So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Okay.
You're my initiator, and sometimes that feels daunting, but you're relentless, and you continue to build me up and remind me that I'm capable of more than I think. That over the years, it's very energizing, even if my initial response is like to withdraw or push it away or deflect the compliment, let's say. It's very energizing to have somebody like you in my corner, propping me up, cheering me on, saying like, give it a try, you know? So it can be whether I'm pursuing something creatively, learning new skills. You're the reason I went and learned how to build guitars. Like, you were the initiator in that, reminding me that how much I like music and how much I like to write, and supporting that, allowing me to have the time to explore those things, as well as getting out of another comfort zone, which is I'm a homebody, and you love to travel, and I love traveling with you. So for how much I talk about how traveling, it depletes me, like, let's be real, but you are like the most excellent travel partner. And we figured it out for the most part, but it's like we didn't solve the problem. Like, there's still so many things about traveling that it's just the way I react to it. And we know it. So it's like, it's not a problem. It's just a reality. And it's like, okay, like, if we're going somewhere, we're not going to plan it so that we have to get up at 6 a.m. every day. Cause I don't even do that at home. Right.
Right.
Like, I know it's an adjustment for you, but like, that doesn't mean we don't leave the Airbnb or the room at noon. Right. Like, it's not like that anymore. Like when I was working overnights and it was really hard for me to adjust. It's more of, well, if I'm not going to be up until 7:38, that means you have some free time. That also doesn't mean I take the next 3 hours when I wake up and you're just like champing at the bit to get going. Like, there's compromise there. So getting me out and seeing more and experiencing a little more, even if it feels a little uncomfortable, that it's not depleting, even though it feels like it for me. It's helping me experience more and tap back into that adventurous spirit that I know is in there somewhere. It's just I get so used to the practicality of the day-to-day, getting the things done that need to get done. I forget to step above and beyond that and like stretch a little. It energizes me more than I think I'm care to admit. You know, it's interesting.
it's one that's on my list too. Trust me, not every time we've traveled somewhere together has it felt all that energizing, because especially when we were first together, I had very different expectations than you did of what was fun in travel. Like, I'm the Disney person that would go for the rope drop, like get there as early as possible, spend the entire day there until they kick you out.
Yeah.
That's just not your jam.
No.
And there's something in between my let's go for the rope drop at Disney, your let's get there at noon. We've come somewhere in between those two for each other, is what I'm kind of hearing you say.
Yeah.
I think that's good. You and I have a trip coming up. You and I are going to do a road trip, just you and I.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really excited about that.
Me too.
I don't even know all the adventures that are going to be on the way, but I'm really excited about that. I was glad you said yes.
And part of me, like the uncertainty of we don't even really know what we're getting ourselves into yet. I've had enough reps where that's not unsettling. It's more of like, oh, there's possibility. Like, even though I don't like having every minute scheduled on a trip, I do like some sense of what is going to happen. And I know it's not been easy for you because you will schedule everything, but you're also open to being like, let's hit these milestones, or I can't remember what you call them.
What are our vacation wish? Like, if we go for a family, what is your one vacation wish that we get done on the vacation?
Like, that's kind of weird to me. And I still have, I don't know how to answer that, right? Because I'm like, vacations are just new to me, right? It's still like these many years later, it's still just like, I still get I guess I do get a little anxiety about travel because I wasn't used to it, right? I'm like, oh, you can actually go and do something different? Like, I thought I just had to go to work and then have a weekend and then go back to work and then have a weekend. So for a while, that shift, that change, that was more depleting and daunting because it was unknown. But I love that the shift has been made of, well, it's unknown, but it's going to be fun because it's with you.
Oh,
there's a lot of technological changes that make travel so much easier for us. And if one thing doesn't work out, there's a bunch of options, or whether it's eating or staying somewhere, or like we made it through a road trip, almost probably 20 before we weren't married. No. And like your car broke down.
Oh yeah. In the middle of Ohio.
Yeah. This is before smartphones.
1 a.m.
Yeah. And we figured
it just turned off.
We figured it out. Right.
Yeah. My alternator was shot.
Well, I didn't figure that out. The AAA came.
AAA did. Yeah.
And the people figured it out for us. But we weren't stranded in a car overnight. Like, we found a place to stay. It was fine. And that's an adventure, right?
Yes. So one other thing that energizes me, I hope this doesn't make you shy. I don't think it will. But
we'll find out.
One thing that energizes me is the way that we communicate. We do that in a lot of different ways, but we often text during the workday. We share different videos or
like podcasts,
reels,
and stuff,
podcasts. There we go.
Yeah, or like there's reels, like you said, right? Like Instagram or YouTube
funny
shorts,
ones.
Right? Yeah, there's funny ones so silly little things like that, right? But like it's a way to communicate. Like, haha, look at this funny joke,
Yeah.
Or like, oh, did you listen to this podcast, right?
Exactly.
Or check this out, I listened to this.
Like the other thing too, and I'm thinking this is maybe more recent. So those things I really love, but also knowing that I can send you something. Like I sent you a picture of myself like almost in tears at work because of how much my knee hurt, and even just getting like a virtual hug back from you.
Yeah.
Like I feel like we're pretty open and can be vulnerable and supportive of each other and how we communicate.
Yeah, the lines of communication are open, and when they're not, there is a correlation to our mood probably.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're gone and you're busy, I'm probably like sending you texts, like poking you like, hey, how's it going? What's up? Like, I'm used to hearing from you. Having open communication and the responsiveness is important. But like, I don't think either one of us want to be, if I don't hear back from you in 10 minutes or a minute,
Right.
it's fine.
Yeah.
The lines are there. And if I get a message of, can you talk? Like, we don't need to dance around it, right? Like,
Right. Because like even on Friday, I think I messaged you to see if you had time to talk because I was just feeling a little bummed about my knee being in so much pain. I was a little nervous about going to the doctor and what were they going to find and what was it going to mean? But you were busy. You had a meeting you were on. And I'm like, oh no, I can just talk to you later. It wasn't like I have to talk.
Right. What?
I'm thinking of something that lights me up.
Yeah, tell me.
And this is a recent example, but I think you'll get it and you'll probably be like, oh geez. So when our dryer conked out, you went and you figured out how or if it needed to be replaced. You got a new dryer, replaced it, and then you took the old dryer and brought it to the recycling center.
Yeah.
I was like, wow.
Like, oh, he can actually do things.
Like, oh my goodness. Because I was like, oh, no, this is going to be in our garage. Because what do you do with a dryer?
Yeah.
That's conked out. You got to figure out when are you going to take it to the recycling center? And I'm like, oh, one more thing in our garage. Yeah. And you like took care of the whole darn thing. I'm like, that definitely lit me up. Like, you go, Keith.
That's funny. You know, actually that threw a wrench in my schedule. And it was at first it was like, oh no, like it's throwing everything off. Like I was supposed to be doing laundry and the laundry's still wet and I need to go to training. Then I have to come back and I have this other thing and this other thing. And then tomorrow I have other things, but you're leaving. And so, but I got to do your laundry. And so I was just like, okay, hold on. Went on YouTube, figured out how to check things, realized it just like, this might fix it, but it's old. It's as old as our house, probably older. Like it wasn't like the newest model, I'm sure. Like when we first bought our house, you know, it wasn't horrible, but it's like, so anyway, my point is I went into problem solving mode. And as you said, I kind of got a bunch of stuff done. Like I troubleshooted, I solved the problem, got rid of the other problem of having a broken dryer. And I remember thinking like, oh, I can do things. Like I can, like, it's been a while since something like that, a physical thing. Like I spend a lot of time creative and digital. Like I know we've talked about that. And like the podcast feels kind of like more artsy and creative, but like building things, moving things. Like I forget how much I enjoy movement and physically making something happen, like moving a dryer, I guess. Right. I noticed it and I kind of forgot about it. So I'm glad you brought it up. I don't know what else is there with that, but that's something that actually lit me up too. Even though my initial response was like, oh, great, this, but not just sitting in it. And like I could have just taken laundry to one of our parents' house and delayed fixing the problem. And I'm like, that is just as much work, if not more, than fixing the dryer or getting a new one.
Right.
After I took like an hour to assess, and I'm going on way too much about fixing the dryer. I'm sorry. But after getting through it and it felt so good to get the old dryer out the next morning. It just happened to work. Like that's when they had. I
think you messaged me that when I landed in Chicago. Like, I brought it out to the recycling center. I'm like, whoa, I should have sent you like a day and a half.
I should have sent you a selfie with like two arms up in the air, like flexing, like I did it, you know, like, because that's what it felt like, kind of like, which is so silly. Like, I'm like, look at me, I did it. It's kind of what it felt like. Anyway, I appreciate you saying that. I'm glad that energized you.
Lights me up a little bit.
Yeah,
makes me smile.
What lights me up about you? So I don't know if I've ever told you this, but something about you that lights me up is your intuition and your insight, what you see in people and interactions and even shows we watch, like stories, like the way that you interpret how things are unfolding. You're usually spot on and you see things I don't see. There's a part of me that like you build me up and make me think of myself as astute, observant. You make me feel good about my perspective of how I see things, and like how like even like watching comedy, right? I'll get the joke, or I'll be laughing out loud, and I'll be like, oh, you know, and I'll have some insight. But we've been watching like shows, right? And you'll say like, now she's going to X, Y, or Z, or I bet at the end this happens, and you're right. And I'm like, what? Like, and I think the way that you see relationships in real life, also, you see the connections in relationships and things like that. And it's really interesting because it's different. Like I don't receive the information the same way, and I definitely don't send it out the same way. And so it's just kind of delightful. Like you'll say something and like, it's like totally off my radar. I'm like, what are you talking? And then I'll take like a half a beat and I'll be like, oh, you're so right. Like that is probably going to happen. Or, you know, like we're watching a show or something. It's really interesting. It makes me happy. Like, I'm like, oh, wow, you're astute, you know? And so I don't know if you see certain things in me that you appreciate it. And it's like, well, of course you do, because you have them too, you know, like, I think we're both like that. Like we both like similar things. I think commitment came up too, right? Like I think that's a big thing, or can feel like a big thing. But on the other hand, it's like, I've already made the decision, you know, 20 years ago. Like it's not going to get any better than this.
What's that mean?
You are the best thing that ever happened to me.
Oh.
And I'm going to do everything I can to keep being better. That's the only way it's going to get better. I'm going to keep getting better to make sure that I can show up for you the best I can and the best that you deserve. The commitment's already there. It's now I need to be committed to improving and understanding and all the things that make it work for us.
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with knowing yourself, right? And I think it's not just trying to understand better.
I'm not trying to appease you.
No, exactly. And that's why I'm just clarifying.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of it does come with reflection and journaling. You and I both do a lot of that.
Well, that's why I got all animated, because that makes, like you're saying it so much better than I was, because you see, like to my point, that's what lights me up, is like you saw what I was trying to say there, which is, and because I don't see it clearly, I'm doing all this work to be better. Well, that's called self-improvement, right? And I forget that, imagine I'm doing work to feel better in my own head and in my own skin, and our relationship blossoms too. Like, like it sounds so simple.
But I think the one thing, maybe this isn't, and you can cut this out, but it's about self-improvement and growth, but it's not about fixing who you are at your core. Because I see those as very different things. Like fixing assumes that something's broken. And we may have come to each other at certain points in our relationship where we thought either we needed to be fixed or the other person needed to be fixed. And I think I hear that a lot just from people. But I think the important work is not to try and fix somebody else or fix yourself, but to really understand who you are so you can grow and develop and figure out how do you coexist in the world with your partner in a way that honors the best parts of both of you. Does that make sense?
Kind of. But I kind of come at it.
Of course.
I kind of come at it differently because I feel like there's a big part of me that needs to be fixed. Like I feel like there's a part of me that's broken.
Aww.
And that's where like I maybe do overreact when I'm depleted, or I'm not considerate. It's because I'm coming from maybe that shadow space that I maybe used to not pay attention to, and now learning that, well, that's part of me, I think is what you're saying. Like I just come from it differently, which is another thing. I appreciate your perspective of like me focusing on maybe my deficiencies, if I call them that. Is that going to help anything, or am I just going to wallow in something that's making me feel depleted versus, well, that might not, that's part of me, but that doesn't need to dictate how I move forward.
It's somewhat related. What I think is you don't need to necessarily fix that part of you, but you need to be aware of it, understand it, so that you can lean in and show up in the places that do give you energy. So you aren't in this state of depletion and low energy and darkness.
And being aware of when I'm like, when that's happening so that I can course correct and be like, okay, I'm like, and that's the whole thing is like, what's depleting me when I answer that question. If there's a bunch of things that depleted me, I can be like, okay, so now what do I do to energize me?
Right.
Reach out to a friend, talk with you, tell you how I'm feeling, go for a walk,
listen to music,
yeah. Listen to a podcast, drink some water, scribble in a notebook, get, a sketch pad out and doodle while I'm listening to something. Anyway, we're not trying to be prescriptive. That's interesting that came up. But I think you and I both are like, are we just repeating ourselves like every now and then? Right.
Right.
But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to continue to be aware and to notice things. I don't mean to constantly repeat myself, but if I don't pay attention to the things that energize or deplete me, I'm probably not taking care of myself. And then I can't take care of others like you and the other people I care about, like the kids and family, and friends.
Yeah. And if I'm depleted, I know I don't show up the way I want to. Right.
Oh, you generally light me up all the time.
Oh, right back at you, hon. I didn't expect us talking about our relationship today, but it's been kind of fun.
Yeah, me either. It's been a good conversation. We probably said a lot more than we think.
I think so too.
In a good way.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Didn't see this one coming?
No. We should probably go.
Okay. Do you have anything that you've been engaging with that you've been enjoying?
I went back and saw a couple talks by Sir Ken Robinson. He talks about education, what's it for, who's it for kind of thing. Very in line with Seth's talk on similar topics, which was really interesting to dive back into. And that led me to borrow The Element, one of Sir Ken Robinson's books. So I've been listening to that. And then the other thing, I was listening to the Mel Robbins podcast. I think I sent you a link from it. She's got like a free little 2-session workshop. I think it's called Make It Happen.
Yeah.
So I listened to the first one, and there's a workbook which I haven't done. But my point is there's lots of free resources that energize me and help me keep doing the work of leaning forward and kind of energizing me to keep my momentum going. I sometimes talk about MasterClass or Skillshare and these paid things, but there's a lot of free resources, which is why we listen to lots of podcasts and audiobooks from the library. So it's kind of my key takeaway is I found a lot of stuff that was easily obtained and listened to or watched. And I really enjoyed it. And I just got to make sure I keep that practice up, putting the good things in so that I put good things out. And so that's my 2 cents. How about you, Laura?
So I'm going to give you something that a podcast I listened to and then something fun we've been watching that I've been enjoying. So I'll start with the podcast. I dug into Mel Robbins too this week, and she had a episode called How to Build the Life You Want, Timeless Wisdom for More Happiness and Purpose. She had Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar on. He wrote the book, What Makes a Good Life? Lessons from the Longest Study on Happiness. And it was really, really good. It was all about happiness, being happy, what creates happiness. Can you choose it? Can you cultivate it? And it was a good podcast episode. And I want to read the book after engaging with that.
Yeah, I'll have to check those out.
Yeah. So I'll share that with you. Then the other thing that you and I have been watching, so we enjoy spending time together. Obvious. Well, I think it's obvious, if not, obviously. And so the one thing that we've been digging into is A Gentleman in Moscow. I know you read the book. I started reading the book. I didn't get very far just because stuff and things.
It's such a good book.
And I really am enjoying the show with you. So it's fun though, because you kind of know what the story was. And so you're kind of comparing it of how close is it or not.
I hadn't read it in a while. And so I'm misremembering some things, but I also know some things feel different. Now I'm like, I'm going to have to reread this now.
Yeah.
But it's good. Sorry.
No, don't be. So A Gentleman in Moscow. So far, it's a really good watch.
Yeah.
Streaming now.
What was the other one that we just started watching just to have something fun to watch? That was on Apple TV.
Loot.
Oh, right.
With Maya Rudolph.
Yeah. That's fun.
That is fun.
Part of me feels guilty watching shows because like, oh, I could be doing other things, right? But it's like a time for us and we both like stories. And I think it helps me be a better storyteller and to see these different I enjoy it, and I want to not feel guilty about enjoying shows. So, but if I ever start complaining about not having enough time, you say, well, maybe stop watching so many shows, right? Like, I think that's the key.
Yes.
And it was another one of those things where you're like, let's try this show. And I'm like, oh. Because it's like, if it's good, I'm going to want to watch it. And it's another thing I'm going to want to watch. So I think that's what I'm feeling.
I just hope there's multiple seasons.
I feel like there are.
Okay. I hope so.
Okay. So Loot, A Gentleman in Moscow, Mel Robbins podcast.
Mel Robbins podcast.
Send that my way.
I will. And then can I say one more as well? The Julia Louis-Dreyfus podcast, Wiser Than Me, is out with their second season. And so I've been starting to consume that one as well.
You've been talking about that off and on. Yeah. And you said some friends were like, do you listen to this? And you're like, of course I do. And I'm like, oh, I should probably listen to this because now there's like a little buzz in like our friend circle about it.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've listened to more than one episode.
It's really good. And again, just the premise is she interviews older women to learn lessons from them. And it's really good. So I listened to one just this week with her and the Barefoot Contessa, Ina Garden.
We better wrap it up. We're going to have this like supersized episode. And yeah.
Just so excited to talk to you after a weekend at a conference.
Me too. All right, let's get out of here.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
I love you.
I love you too.
How do you want to end?
Are
we done?
Yeah.
Hit that like and subscribe.
Should Keith and Laura talk more about themselves or less? Just
no, it's weird.
Keep it behind the scenes, folks.
I don't even know. Because this all started because